Chick most notably called 3,338 consecutive games for the LA Lakers.
That's absolutely astonishing.
He got the nickname Chick from a prank played on him when he attended Bradley University. Teammates gave him a shoebox only to have him open it and find a dead chicken inside.
Oh, dear. They're not a great prank, but a pretty good nickname.
Wikipedia has a list as long as my arm of chick-isms, the most iconic of which is...
Here's the ball to Woolridge, dribbled right down the middle, slam dunk over Minute Bowl.
Then you are in Australia right now.
You're talking NBA basketball. You're talking great teams. You're talking great individual players.
Takes it off, and there's number 23, and of course Johnny goes nuts.
So we're all getting goosebumps thinking about it now.
I just tried to go out there and play my game.
I have no idea what you're talking about, Adam. I don't like anybody. I'm not a people person.
Strand, you made the pass, yes. Christian, can you catch the ball? Yes.
All the stars were aligned and all the muscles fired at the right time, and I was able to get off the ground and throw one down.
I was saving that as a surprise for you.
And now, introducing your host for In All Airness, Adam Ryan.
Welcome back to another episode of In All Airness podcast. We're up to episode 52. Aaron, how are you today, mate?
Good, mate. Looking forward to speaking about the voices in my head.
Exactly right, mate. Today we're going to be chatting all about some of the most influential, to us particularly, NBA broadcasters of all time. We had to pick a starting five of sorts. Now, I went the extra mile, and actually, because of my OCD type behaviour, I had to narrow it down to a studio host, a play-by-play guy, colour commentator or analyst, a sideline reporter, and an alternate. There's five people that we're going to be choosing. We're going to go through each of those picks very shortly.
You went super dork on it.
I did. I couldn't help myself, mate. I've got OCD when it comes to this sort of stuff, so I had to narrow it down to position by position. A quick disclaimer. First of all, a majority of my selections are based primarily on the impact that these guys have had on me, those that are most responsible for fostering our respective love of the NBA. 1989 was the first year that I was consciously aware of the NBA that was on TV here in Australia, and since then I've been fortunate to have access to the collections of NBA games on videotape and DVD, courtesy of an amazing game trading community. So my picks will fall within the time frame of 1984, effectively, through 1998. And the second disclaimer is that whilst I do love NBA teams' own regional TV coverage, many of the names we'll be discussing today are, for the most part, national broadcasters, and there is some crossover, but fear not, we'll be name-dropping many of those omitted in the main discussion when we do go through our honourable mentions, which are later in this episode. And it's important to note as well, mate, we're going to be including some classic sound bites all throughout this episode, which are going to feature some great calls, some very recognisable, others not so much, that I'm sure every single person listening to this episode will absolutely relish.
And as you mentioned before, the same deal with me. A lot of these guys that I'm going to mention as my favourite broadcasters are as integral to my love of the game and the way that I got into the game back in the 1990s. They're as important to me as what the actual players were and some of the games, because obviously the great players of the NBA I often replay in my own head, but of course accompanying all of these plays are commentary, and some of them we'll be going over today as some of the most iconic pieces of commentary in our experiences as NBA fans.
Perfectly said. #iconic.
The word iconic will be coming up on a few occasions throughout this podcast.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. Now, a very quick historical background to the coverage of the NBA on TV, particularly during the period of time we're chatting about. CBS were the national broadcaster of NBA games going back, I think, as far as 1974 through to 1990 NBA season. They finished with the NBA Finals in 1990. There's many great names that were involved over the years. I'm not going to single out anybody really, but too many to name, basically. ESPN then, and also in conjunction with USA Network, they also had the NBA rights and were the national cable partners in conjunction with CBS in the early 1980s. And then from about 85 through 88, TBS came into play, and also from 89 and 90, TBS and TNT were also doing games through the cable TV network. From 1991 through 1998, there was a combination of TNT, TBS, and of course, the iconic NBA on NBC. I'll just hand it over to you, mate, if you wanted to make your first selection of our starting five.
Ron Thulin is my first pick, along with Bob Neal. Ron was my favourite play-by-play man to enjoy listening to a game. Ron had catchphrases of his own, such as when a player came up short on a jumper, Ron would say, Grant from 16 goes 15 and a half, and a little too much French pastry on a hot dog move that went wrong. And here's Ron at his best in the pivotal Game 3 of the 1994 Eastern Conference semifinals at Chicago Stadium.
Early our story, Chicago led by 8 with 2:21 to go, but New York has outscored them 10-2 since then. 1.8 left, no timeouts left for the Bulls. Myers triggers the inbounds pass. Kukoc for the win! It goes! Oh, brother!
My first selection, mate, is Bob Costas, and I'm going to choose him as my studio host, with apologies to Pat O'Brien. Now, some brief historical background about Bob. His first full-time gig was as radio voice for the Spirits of St. Louis in the ABA at the ripe old age of just 22. He also was a one-time play-by-play guy with Johnny Red Kerr for Chicago Bulls games during the 79-80 NBA season. In 1980, he commenced his 20-plus year career with NBC, and he also hosted NBC's Showtime, which was a pre-game show from 1991 through 1996, and also did play-by-play, including most notably the 1991 All-Star Game, and then later the 1998 NBA Finals. Amongst other things, mate, he had a sensational sense of humour. I absolutely loved the stuff that Bob Costas came out with regularly, and he had an encyclopedic knowledge of numerous sports to boot. So here's my selection showcasing Bob's immense talent. First, from the 1991 All-Star Game, in place of Marv Albert, whose mum had passed away that week, Bob made a great call, assisted by the czar of the telestrator, Mike Fratello, of MJ's hanging layup, with about 6:40 to go in the first quarter.
East 12, West 8. Dumars, Jordan, double clutch, gets the roll. And that's what the crowd was waiting for. Michael Jordan to show him a little something.
I actually had no idea that was the other reason why Bob called that game instead of Marv. That Marv Albert's mother had passed away.
I didn't have any idea either. It was just when I was doing the research on Bob, I just wanted to know why he actually called the 91 All-Star Game and then didn't really do any more play-by-play until much later on during the 90s, so that's the reason why. Our next clip is in MJ's last game as a Bull at Madison Square Garden. Bob retorts to Isiah Thomas's comments about MJ's highlight move.
Jordan! Nearly robbed and the shot's going to fall! Oh, man! That was nice. Nice is an understatement.
Next, from the 1998 NBA Finals, nothing more needs to be said.
Jordan with 43. Malone is doubled. They swat at it and steal it. Here comes Chicago. 17 seconds. 17 seconds from Game 7 or from championship number 6. Jordan open. Chicago with the lead. Timeout, Utah. 5.2 seconds left. Michael Jordan running on fumes with 45 points.
At the end of the game, you got to get it out of his hands.
Michael double back. You're going to see he's in the play. Look where Hornacek is setting the screen. Michael never clears, so Malone doesn't see him. He comes from the blind side and strips him. So 3 crucial plays here by Michael Jordan now as he gets Brian Russell with a quick crossover. Look at Brian Russell slips, and Michael pulls up and buries the shot to give him a 1-point lead.
That may have been, who knows what will unfold in the next several months, but that may have been the last shot Michael Jordan will ever take in the NBA.
Watch Jordan's left hand here as he gives Russell the push. The referee can't see that. Jordan frees himself up for a clean look. The greatest thing about Jordan is he has all the tricks. That's why it's so difficult to guard him.
Stockton, Hornacek, Antoine Carr. Karl Malone and Brian Russell. If they score, there's a game 7. If they don't, for the second straight year, they go out in 6. Stockton, Harper's on him. Behind the screen, Harper got a piece of it. It comes off. The Chicago Bulls have won their 6th NBA championship, and it's their second three-peat.
Now, that clip actually also included the voice of Doug Collins and Isiah Thomas there, mate.
Yeah, and the aforementioned Doug. Sorry, I had to throw that one in there.
Yeah, well done.
The aforementioned Doug Collins is my next selection in my starting 5. Doug was, of course, the head coach of the Chicago Bulls for 3 seasons. In my opinion, the greatest color man I've ever experienced watching a game. Collins is a passionate basketball mind. He uses his own experiences in certain situations to describe what was happening on the court. And he would often even predict plays that were about to happen during games. As a former Bulls coach, he would also regale stories from his time in Chicago when calling a Bulls game.
As we record this, mate, and I echo those sentiments wholeheartedly, by the way, although Doug actually did make my final 5. Apologies to Doug. As we record this, though, mate, Doug recently appeared on the BS Report with Bill Simmons, and it is an absolute must-listen, fantastic podcast episode where he talks about his entire history, basically, within the game of basketball.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic.
Now, my next selection, mate, is Marv Albert, and I've chosen him as my play-by-play man. Now, apologies here to Bob Neal and Ron Thulin.
If they're listening.
Exactly, if they're listening. Hello to them both as well. A brief background about Marv Albert. I don't even know where you start, basically. 1967, he became the radio and TV voice of the New York Knicks. And then while he was still working for MSG Network, he was named NBC's lead broadcaster. And that was from 91 through 1997. He was replaced by Bob Costas in the 98 season, following an off-court indiscretion. It's impossible to encapsulate Marv's impact on the game. And in just a moment, I'm going to include some Marv Albert sound clips.
Michael Jordan, a quiet first half by design, looking to get others involved. Jordan with the step and the bucket. Jordan over Scott. Yes. Michael Jordan on fire. 18 points. He's hit his last 8. Here's Jordan. Yes. And it counts. And here's Jordan going for 12. He's got it. 12 straight field goals from Michael Jordan. The look away to Livingston. Jordan. Oh, a spectacular move by Michael Jordan. That's 13 consecutive field goals.
A beautiful segue into my next selection. In my starting 5, I've cheated a little bit by selecting Marv and Mike with my next pick.
That is cheeky.
Those guys were the NBA on NBC. They constantly took the mickey out of each other and really played off each other really, really well during broadcasts.
There's no better example of that than the sound clip that we're about to play. It's from the 1992 NBA playoffs, and it's around Marshmallow Gate, which is quite an amusing thing that happened behind the scenes during the Chicago versus Cleveland Eastern Conference Finals. Without further ado, here is that said clip, accompanied by the voice of Bob Costas, Mike Fratello, and Ahmad Rashad, who also feature in my top 5.
On Thursday, the Cavs rejected any notion that they play soft. And now it's the Bulls and Michael Jordan wondering what's going on. Today, Game 3 in Cleveland. It may be a holiday weekend, but yes, my friends, the mailman still delivers. Who writes this stuff? Coming up, Showtime. It's Game 3 of the Eastern Conference Finals at the Richfield Coliseum. Chicago and Cleveland tied, of course, at a game apiece. For an update now, we go out to Richfield and join Marv Albert and Mike Fratello. Marvelous.
All right, Bob, and Thursday night in Chicago was certainly a struggle for Michael Jordan, as you say, bothered by that sore throat, plus a touch of the flu. Jordan shot only 7 for 22. Michael was so concerned about his subpar performance that for the first time in the playoffs, he actually came out early to shoot around, something that he rarely does, but he told us that physically he is fine.
Michael Jordan's feeling much better. He's ready to go this afternoon. He had not touched the basketball since the end of Game 2, so he felt the need to come out early and get a feel for the Coliseum floor.
And as we heard Lenny Wilkins make reference to a moment ago, it seems the catchword here in the Cleveland area has been marshmallows. That's all we've heard the past 24 hours. Fans bringing supplies of marshmallows to today's game. Now, for more on the marshmallow saga, let's go outside the Coliseum to the parking lot. Here's Ahmad Rashad.
All right, thanks, Marv. I was talking to Michael Jordan just before the game today, and he said for the first time in his career, he was involved in a controversy which he had nothing to do with. The Chicago press had said that the Cleveland Cavaliers were soft as marshmallows and soft as cream puffs. The result? This is the reaction of the Cleveland fans. Marshmallows and cream puffs. Marv?
Czar, do you like marshmallows?
No.
Bob?
Thank you for that fine report, gentlemen.
My next pick is Mike Fratello, mate. He's going to be my colour commentator / analyst. And apologies to the aforementioned Doug Collins and also the more locally known but legendary Johnny Redker. For extensive historical background on the Tsar, look no further than episode 32 of the In All Airs podcast, where Mike Fratello was my guest for the best part of an hour, and we broke down his entire career, and it was just phenomenal. There's my first phenomenal call to actually have the chance to speak with Mike Fratello. So inallairness.com/32. Over to you, mate.
Hashtag shameless self-promotion.
Oh, no doubt.
The next pick in my starting five is Bob Neal, who is a really humorous guy with a very unique take on the action, and it came a close second to Ron Thulin for me as a caller of a game. And here's Bob Neal with Hubie Brown calling a vintage MJ game in Game 3, first round versus the Atlanta Hawks back in 1993.
Now the Hawks have a foul to give before they get into the penalty situation.
I don't know if this is the guy, but he's going to have the ball in his hand. 5 seconds to shoot. He goes for three.
He drains it. Michael Jordan has 37 points. What a performance in this series.
And just think about it since he has come back from the injury. I mean, has he missed the shot? I mean, it's just amazing.
My next selection is Ahmad Rashad, and I'm going to have him as my sideline reporter. Now, apologies to Craig Sager, the legendary Craig Sager, and Bulls TV's Lou Canales, who is also one of my favourite sideline reporters, but on a more regional level. What were you laughing at there, mate?
Well, the amount of apologies.
Exactly. There's going to be a lot.
I guess that you need to put these apologies in case these people ever listen to the podcast.
That's mostly why I'm doing it, because they're all just legends in my own eyes, but I've got to narrow it down to 5, and that's why the apologies are coming quick and fast.
And also, speaking of Lou Canales, I had the pleasure of meeting Lou recently, as I'm currently in the Windy City to watch the Chicago Bulls play basketball, and Lou was co-hosting Waddle and Sylvie with Sylvie on the Friday that I arrived here and went past and had the opportunity to shake Lou's hand.
Thanks for rubbing it in there, mate. Well done.
Hashtag humble brag.
Nah, he's a great guy, Lou, and loved him on the sidelines for the Chicago Bulls during the glory years in the 1990s.
That's exactly what I said to him.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, pretty much.
Now, some quick background on the great Ahmad Rashad, who also actually was a recent guest on the BS Report with Bill Simmons as well. And that was another fantastic episode where he talked about his career to date as well. He's one of the most famous graduates from Oregon University. He was a former pro footballer and he was in the Pro Bowl 4 times. He worked in TV covering sports whilst he was still a professional athlete. From 1991 through 2002, he was the host of NBA Inside Stuff with Julie Moran, Willow Bay and Summer Sanders, and he was involved in many NBA on NBC games during that time as sideline reporter, and of course is a very close friend to one Michael Jeffrey Jordan.
My 5th and final selection in my starting 5 was the one and only Hubie Brown. Hubie was a close second to Doug Collins for me as a colour man, and I mean, come on.
Oh, I can't believe you did that. I was going to wait for you to stop talking and say, I mean, come on.
I mean, come on.
That's so good.
Hubie and the word knowledgeable together is just an understatement. He's concise, very, very humorous. Eddie Doucette actually got him his first job in TV back in 1981 with the aforementioned USA Network. And best of all, Hubie is still doing it as good as ever at the age of 81 years old in 2015.
Absolutely incredible that he's still doing that, and absolute legend of the game. Now, my fifth and final selection, mate, is, and I've used this as an alternate, depending on how you want to pronounce it, Peter Vecsey. And my apologies there go out to Hubie Brown.
If you're listening.
If you're listening, Hubie, I do apologise. Again, for extensive historical background on Peter Vecsey, look no further than episode 8 of the In All Earnest podcast, inallearnest.com/8.
And may I say, before you get to a clip of the episode number 8 that you had with Peter, I undoubtedly consider that to be your finest episode of the In All Earnest podcast. Some of the in-depth gold that Peter gave you during that interview was quite extraordinary.
Thank you, mate. And I'm still stunned to this day that he was so forthcoming and just into the conversation where he just kept on dropping absolute Denver nuggets left, right and centre, mate. So very, very honoured to have Peter on the show. I asked Peter about a famous interview that he did with the mailman, Karl Malone, not long after the 1997 NBA Finals ended. And here's how that went. And apologies for my poor sound quality, because at the time I recorded the episode, it was apparently before I learnt how to use a microphone to speak. But here's what Vecsey had to say about that infamous interview with the mailman.
In 1997, you had a remarkable post-game interview with Karl Malone following the Bulls' win over the Jazz in Game 6 of the Finals. I know just based on your reaction already, you can recall it pretty quickly.
No. I got to tell you the truth.
Yep.
This is all the truth. And I hate people who say I got to tell you the truth, because if I'm not telling you all the time, I shouldn't be saying it this time.
Yeah.
But the funny part about it is that my son asked me about that interview. My son is now 25, so he was real young then. But he was traveling with me all over the country in those days, but he didn't remember this interview, and so it goes up on YouTube. I guess it's up there, and he says, what were you thinking about doing that interview? He said, Karl Malone was going to punch you out. I said, what interview? I swear to God,
you don't remember?
I don't remember the interview.
Oh well.
He showed it to me. No, I saw it. I saw myself asking the questions, and I'm saying to myself, well, that's what the hell? Pretty provocative questions. Not a fan of Karl's. Not a fan. A fan as a player, but I thought he was one of the dirtiest players I've ever been around. Seeing what he did to people, bully, other stuff off the court. Didn't like him. Don't like him. But that was pretty ballsy to me to be asking those questions of him. And if I were Karl Malone, I probably would have just, the hell with this, I'm out of here.
I think we both agree that you did not play to your MVP standards or your usual standards. Do you feel you let yourself down, or the team, or the city?
No, I don't feel at all. I've had a hell of a year, and I'm not going to let anybody second guess that, because when you start doing that, you might as well quit, and I'm not a quitter. I don't feel that. I felt I came out and I played hard. I didn't have the kind of series I would like to, and everybody will say whatever they want to say, but not at all. I came out and I tried to play hard every night, and sometimes the shots might not be there or the free throw, but the effort was there every night. So, no, I don't feel like I let anybody down. If they do, the hell with them.
Larry Bird said to me before coming into this series that there was a huge pressure difference between the Western Conference Finals and the Finals. Did you feel that?
Nope. Oh, I didn't. I felt that we didn't do some things, and like I said, obviously I didn't play up to the way I wanted to play. The hell with what you guys wanted me to play like. I didn't play like I wanted to play. And I didn't feel any different pressures at all. I just never got into the rhythm that I wanted to get in. And if I was letting anybody down, I don't feel like that. I just feel like I didn't have the kind of series I wanted.
Thank you, Karl. Back to the floor now.
That just leaves us with our honourable mentions. Of course, I've already had more apologies than you can poke a stick at.
I'm sure that our starting fives will all sleep better tonight, knowing that the illustrious In All Earnest episode number 52 has selected them in our starting fives as broadcasters. But
their career is complete.
Complete.
So I'll get things off to a good start by mentioning the name Marty Glickman. Now, he's considered by many to be the godfather of broadcasting. He's before our time, it's fair to say. But a quick tip of the hat to Syracuse University. Marty Glickman, whose name is likely familiar to some diehard fans listening, his legacy helped develop future generations of broadcasters, including Marv Albert, who's into his 70s as we speak, Dick Stockton, also in his 70s, Bob Costas in his 60s, Iron Eagle, former podcast guest, dare I say, and more. Now, incredibly, mate, those aforementioned names are all Syracuse alumni. A few more honourable mentions on my behalf. I'd like to quickly mention Tom Dorr, who was a guest on episode 2 of the podcast, and Wayne Larrivee, both play-by-play guys for the Bulls on Sports Channel and WGN TV, respectively. Sports Channel would become Fox Sports Chicago during the 1998 season, and it's now known as Comcast Sportsnet Chicago. Here's a sample of Tom Dorr's great work, calling Toni Kukoc's fantastic buzzer beater for the win against the arch-rival Indiana Pacers during the 1994 NBA season.
Look for Miller to pop out. He'll get the screen from Mitchell. 5 seconds, 4 seconds, 3. Here he comes, fade away.
Yes, Miller hits a big one. It's not a 3.
With 0.8 of a second remaining, Reggie Miller takes the bows at the stadium in Chicago. Toni Kukoc comes back in for the Bulls. It is a 2-point Pacer lead with 0.8 of a second, so you got to catch it and shoot it. Toni got it, put it up, look out, he got it!
Is it a 3? It's a 3, they win! Bulls win! Toni Kukoc, 0.8 seconds, yes! Holy mackerel, the Bulls 16th in a row! Oh, listen to this crowd!
They are going as nuts as we are. What an incredible play. Kukoc comes off the screen, comes around the side, sets, fires, and the Pacers have lost 8 in a row here.
You mentioned Wayne Larrivee. He was with the Bulls until 2008 and is now the voice of the Green Bay Packers. He had his catchphrase,
Jordan, ring it up.
When a player hit a field goal. Tom Dorr was with the Bulls, as you said before, from 1991 through to 2008. He had an amazing calling relationship with another man who went by the name of Johnny Red Kerr, who you mentioned before. Red commentated games with the passion of a true Bulls homer. He often told stories during the game that were attached to his long history in the NBA. A fond memory of mine was once when he told a story of the time that Luke Longley first introduced him and Tom Dorr to VB, otherwise known as Victorian Bitter, which is a staple Australian beer. Had a fantastic sense of humour, and my personal favourite Red saying was of coaches listening to fans' opinions. He said that if a coach starts listening to the fans, he winds up sitting next to them.
That's great. That is really good.
And to enjoy a little piece of Red's work on air, here is the final moment of a thrilling Milwaukee at Chicago matchup as called by Red and Jim Durham from February 16, 1989.
Pressey looks to bring it in. He comes in, throws it away. The Bulls have it. Here comes Michael Jordan on the drive, 5 seconds. Jordan on the drive, right of the lane, 18-footer.
Also, mate, a big shout out to the rest of the people associated with the broadcasting the Bulls. We've got guys like Dan Rohn, Steve Cashel, Lou Canales, Norm Van Leer, Darryl Joyner, Chet Kopic, and Rich King. Also, a special mention to Bill Hazen, who predates that group, and, of course, Jim Durham, as you just said a moment ago. Both have iconic calls of the game. We just heard one that involved Jim Durham. Here is one of Bill Hazen's most famous calls.
Great defensive effort by Jordan, who has it on the break, driving all the way in. Oh! He's got an unbelievable move. He put it in and it counts. Can you believe that?
Oh, listen to the crowd here now.
Another name I'd like to quickly mention, mate, is Dan Patrick. Now, this is digging deep into the history of the NBA entertainment pieces from the VHS releases and also halftime interludes, etc. at games that were shown on TV in the 1980s. He was a voice behind some great clips that were shown, and here is a quick sample of his work.
With the game on the line, the walk to the free throw line is a journey into fear. From those who struggle to find their shooting touch, to those who never seem to lose it, it's a constant battle of mind and will. Even legends must come here to be tested, because all those on the road to greatness must eventually stop at the free throw line.
You talk about digging deep. I've also wanted to mention a gentleman by the name of Jack the Goose Givens, who broadcast with TNT during the 1990s. He was drafted by the Atlanta Hawks, 16th overall in the draft, and played 2 seasons for Atlanta. He actually wore Neek's 21 in 156 career games, obviously not at the same time as when Neek was wearing it. My favourite piece of commentary from Goose Givens is his call of one of the coolest things I ever saw MJ do on the court in Game 1 of the 1993 Eastern Conference semifinals versus the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Jordan is fouled by Wilkins. That'll be 4.
And Michael looked over at us and said, he can't guard me. He can't guard me.
A favourite piece of commentary of mine was by Greg Gumbel, brother of Brian Gumbel, and his call of Luke Longley's early domination of the Orlando Magic in Game 1 of the 1996 Eastern Conference Finals.
Jordan back outside to Pippen on the run. Too hard. Longley.
When you gamble defensively, that allows Chicago to have open lanes to the offensive glass. Shaq, a weak effort on Scotty's runner in the lane, and nobody boxed off Longley.
Longley, O'Neal steps in for the steal. Longley to the hook.
Matt Guokas, who played 3 seasons with the Bulls in the 1970s, was magnificent as a colour commentator with NBC during the 1990s. Matt Guokas replaced Mike Fratello alongside Marv Albert when the Tsar went back into coaching with Cleveland in 1993. Guokas was fresh from coaching, so had a fantastic knowledge of the game. He actually coached Shaq's rookie season in Orlando, but unfortunately has turned into a shockingly biased homer as an analyst for the Orlando Magic. He's gone from absolutely brilliant to, I'm not sure if this is a word, unlistenable.
Oh, I'm pretty sure it's a word, but I guess if you're an Orlando fan, you'll probably love him, but otherwise, not as much so. Absolutely
terrific with NBC in the 1990s.
And speaking of, here's one of my favourite, albeit random, sound bites from the 1996 NBA Finals. It features Marv Albert, who we've already talked about, Matt Guokas, as we're talking about now, and a guy that I've yet to mention, who's one of the honourable mentions, the great Bill Walton. This is from Game 3 of the 96 NBA Finals. It's something that's always stuck in my memory, so here we go.
And here's Kemp. Offensive foul. It's a charge on Kemp.
Well, Dennis Rodman saw that one coming from about 30 feet away, and he couldn't believe it. Shawn Kemp just kept coming and coming and coming. He was standing there waiting forever. The offensive charge.
Another turnover. And twice now, Jordan at the offensive end has thrown loud passes. Once to Kukoc, once to Longley. I don't know if they work on those in their native Yugoslavia and in Australia. They need more television sets over there. Bill turning very, very cruel here. Well, that's how you learn the game, Marv, as a kid watching the games.
The next guy I wanted to mention, Dick Stockton, had to be mentioned, obviously, a truly iconic voice in sports commentary, but in particular in NBA games. A simple thing to want from a broadcaster is a voice that's easy on the ears, and Stockton was just that. he will be forever linked to Hubie Brown as one of the great duos on CBS, and this is why.
You'll see the drama unfold. The big thing here is that you jam the passer, or you put a lot of pressure on the man. Now, Nance is laying off him right now, but watch to see if he runs at the ball or he picks up the cutters coming to the ball.
Sellers will inbound. Sellers has Jordan. Jordan with 2 seconds to go. Puts it up and scores at the buzzer. Michael Jordan has won it for Chicago. Michael Jordan hit the basket at the buzzer. Right now, let's go right over to JB with Michael Jordan.
Michael, now I thought you weren't supposed to be feeling so well coming into today's game.
You know, a lot of people put a lot of pressure on me, and I still couldn't concentrate and make my free throws. But I didn't have to take a free throw on the last shot. It was a shot. I felt comfortable. We came in, we stuck tough. We hung right in there, gave ourselves a chance to win, and we won the ball game.
As we take a look at this replay, now you're not one to do an awful lot of boasting, but you had some boasts to make to a few Chicago writers about this series.
A lot of people put us out of this whole series, and you know, I opened my mouth a little bit, and I challenged the guys. I challenged myself and said we could win in 4. But we didn't win in 4, we won in 5. I don't care how many we won in, we won, and that's all that counts.
My last question. There's a pregame ritual that you go through. You're back in the locker room by yourself. There's a song that plays, and you said that was going to be your theme. What's that song that you listen to?
Anita Baker, Give It Your Best. Just go out and give it your all. And that's what I did. I felt that, you know, we had to go out and play. You know, the pressure was not on us, it was on them. We've beaten them here before. We just wanted to duplicate that again, and we did it.
And the Big Apple waits for you.
We're going to New York, baby.
That clip there is probably the most iconic Dick Stockton and Hubie Brown clip that you could possibly hear. And then we also get to hear as well at the end where MJ was being interviewed by James Brown, another great sideline reporter who was with CBS during the 1980s.
One of the great voices for calling sporting events, called one of the earliest games that I ever saw alongside Len Elmore. This gentleman's name is Vern Lundquist, Adam.
Now look at the triple team as Sally and Rodman collapsed on Jordan, and Jordan is still down. Michael is on the floor. Shot no good. Jordan just now getting to his feet, but limping badly. Michael Jordan, as we said, went out with a hip injury at the end of the first quarter. Have you noticed a deficiency in his play or a dropped element of it?
Well, no, certainly when he gets his hands on the ball.
No, there's the answer.
Now, and we'll see here.
Thank you.
Let's have a quick mention as well, mate, about some of the local TV guys who, in some instances, are still very famous because of what they did for the game over many decades. Also are beloved by their respective fan bases. So it'd be remiss of us not to mention LA Lakers legend Chick Hearn.
93-70. This game's in the Admiral refrigerator. The door is closed, the lights out. Butter's getting hard, the eggs are cooling, and the jello is jiggling.
On reading Jeff Pearlman's book, Showtime, I've learned that Chick wasn't only a broadcaster for the Lakers, he actually had a hand in front office decisions there for a while, and most notably called 3,338 consecutive games for the LA Lakers.
That's absolutely astonishing.
He got the nickname Chick from a prank played on him when he attended Bradley University. Teammates gave him a shoebox only to have him open it and find a dead chicken inside.
Oh, dear. They're not a great prank, but a pretty good nickname.
Wikipedia has a list as long as my arm of Chick-isms, which are absolutely fantastic to read. The most iconic of which is...
Here's the ball to Woolridge, dribble drive down the middle, slam dunk over Mutombo.
Speaking of iconic, this name will conjure up many memories. Boston's Johnny Most. And here is a fantastic tirade that Johnny went on during the 1987 NBA playoffs.
Hi there, sports fans. This is Johnny Most reporting for the Boston Celtics.
And we're starting to see the bang-bang stuff now. Rodman is all over Bird. And there is a violent knockdown by Lambert. Oh, my. A completely unnecessary foul by Lambert, and he has the audacity to complain about something. They have been called a dirty ball club, and I can see why. This is a typical disgusting display by Rodman, Lambert, and Isiah Thomas. The yellow, gutless way they do things here. Now the other Lord Fauntleroy's coming in, the other good guy coming in, Rick Mahorn, the guy who hit people from behind. I have a great deal of contempt and disrespect for this kid right now because of the blindside swipe. He took it, Bird. It was Dennis Rodman, and he sneers. He didn't do it because he's a good boy. He wouldn't do something nasty like that. Dennis Rodman did not incur my respect anyway. In fact, tell that to these miserable Detroit media people because they called me jerk of the week. Well, fine, I'll be a jerk of the week, but I'll be myself. I wouldn't be like them for all the money in the world.
Speaking of the Boston Celtics, Mike Gorman, along with Tom Heinsohn, has called Boston Celtics games for over 30 years now. I'm not at all a Celtics fan, but I would tune into a Boston game just to hear Gorman's call of a game. Truly a really iconic team voice. Here's Mike and Tommy from the 1987 NBA playoffs.
Dantley all over Bird. The Celtics find him. Larry will take it. Got it! Larry wanted to go to the line, too.
Well, he saves the big ones for the right moment.
Kevin Calabro is a great NBA caller, but that voice was all Seattle Supersonics. Calabro was with the Supersonics from 1987 through to 2008, and as spectacular as Gary Payton to Shawn Kemp was, Kevin made it that much better with his call of the play, as you're about to hear right here.
Looking inside for Simmons on the post-up. The entry pass deflected. It's a loose. Grabbed by Gill. Nearly knocked down. Centers it to Gary. Up ahead. Lead pass to Kemp. He will go to get it with the right. Back it in the left. And bring it down with two hands. Get up for the downstroke.
Slapped away from behind. Ricky goes back to get it. Fires it cross court. Kemp's got it right up into the alley. Power slam. Tomahawk jam. Yeah, baby. Into Lister's face. And the Sonics take the lead. 48-47. Woo! The Rain Man.
It's awesome just to hear those clips back.
It's goosebump stuff. It's so good.
Yeah, it's awesome stuff. Another guy you want to chat about, mate, was another one of those iconic local TV guys who was on some national broadcasts, but is primarily known in their respective states where they're most famous.
Former NBA player Hot Rod Hundley was announcer for the Utah Jazz from 1974 until 2009. And on hearing this clip that's about to be played for you, you'll immediately attach that name to the Utah Jazz.
Stockton, right to left behind Keith. He'll roll it to the mailman. Hammered up. Stockton and Malone. Stockton and Malone assist. That's brought to you by Stockton and Malone Honda. Stockton and Malone, your all-star dealership. John found him underneath and he hammered it down.
Eric Reed has been calling games for the Miami Heat since its inception in 1988 and is again another one of those names that is immediately attached to a team.
Guarded by Jordan, puts it on the floor, stripped by Jordan. Loose ball to Grant, ahead for Michael, into the front court, behind his back comes left wing, now down the lane, all the way for the two-hand slam, and the foul on Allen Ogg. That is vintage Jordan super stuff.
George Blaha has called games for the Detroit Pistons from 1976 up until the current day. He's well known for his usage of players' nicknames in his call, and here's a snippet from George from the 1989 NBA playoffs.
The 1989 NBA playoffs brought more of the same. Next up, Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. Led by 32 points from his airness, Doug Collins' team shocked the Pistons in Game 1, handing Detroit its first postseason defeat.
And last, but definitely not least for me, is Dikembe, one of the great announcing voices for NBC across many sports. Here's Emberg and his call of one of the biggest upsets in playoff history, 1994 first round Denver Nuggets at Seattle.
8 seconds, Perkins, batted back out, McMillan, another three, way short. That's it. Mutombo embraces the ball, and the unlikely upset, one of the great upsets in NBA playoff history, the 8th seed, a team that was 2 games over 500 on the season. The Denver Nuggets, youngest in the NBA, have beaten The team with the best record in the NBA, the Seattle Supersonics. And Dikembe Mutombo, one of the stars. Hannah Storm.
Robert, your teammate Dikembe Mutombo laying prone on the floor in emotion. This is the biggest first-round upset in NBA playoff history. Can you describe your emotion?
The emotion is running real high right now. We all played hard. We knew if we won the 2 at home, anything could happen in Game 5. And we came out, played a lot of heart. I'm just proud of all the guys.
That's one of the all-time great calls by one of the great broadcasters. So that rounds out our selections, and I'm sure there's plenty that we've overlooked as far as some of the names of broadcasters who we might have not even had the chance to mention, let alone research about, but these are our personal favourites. I've had a blast just putting this episode together, mate, so thanks for being a part of it as well. Speaking of having a blast, I mentioned before the voices in my head when I'm recounting these pieces of commentary attached to these great plays. I hear them a certain way in my head, but then when you sent me through the clip of all of the commentary pieces that we've just included in this podcast episode, to hear them back again was just goosebump stuff, mate. Absolutely fantastic. It's been one of my favourite episodes to date, hands down. So I'm sure that everyone who's listened to it has definitely been taken back in time and enjoyed them probably just as much as we have. Thanks again, mate, for being a part of the show. And I'm sure before too long we'll be back again with yet another episode of In All Earnest. It's been a pleasure for you. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show and share my web address with your friends and colleagues, inallairnest.com. Check out the podcast archive for plenty more episodes with high-profile guests. Follow me on Twitter at inallairnest. Please add your like to the show's social hub, facebook.com/inallairnest. Join me next time for another edition of the show.